Hey there, welcome to Authentically Raw. I'm your host, Jamie Berris.
Well, welcome to the Authentically Raw podcast. Today's guest is Joe Dodd. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Jamie.
I'm super excited. So Joe and I know each other through Susie Moore, actually, a coaching group. So we got to know each other online over Zoom for the past several months. And then we got to meet up in New York in real life.
Yeah.
And that was awesome because she is the author of 4 books, 3 children's books. And I grabbed her book, Mama Bear with the F'd up here, and had her sign it when we met in person. I'm going to read a little bit about who you are, and then you get to tell us exactly who you are too. I love this. Just in the back of the book, Jo was born in England and grew up in the beautiful Dorset countryside. At 21, she traveled across the pond to Atlanta, Georgia for an internship, little knowing she'd fall in love, start a family, and make the U.S. her home. After a successful 25-year stint in corporate America, Jo finally decided to listen to her heart and write. As a mom to 4 sons and having battled with depression for many years, Jo has a passion to help other mama bears realize they are not alone. Oh, we're so not alone in this game.
We are not.
So much fun. So I'd like to just kick off the conversation. Yeah. Anything else you want to just share about yourself, adding on to your bio or?
Yeah, no, just that really I'm in this beginning stages of what it's like to follow my dream. So I think I'm in this really interesting place of like, I'm nearly 50, like I've just turned, well, nearly 50. I've just turned 49. So I've got 1 more year left in my 40s, but I'm just having this realization that I have lived for over 2 decades pleasing everybody else and, you know, looking at what everybody else needs. And it's now finally time to go, you know what, that doesn't work. And I need to fill my cup first. And it's just been this huge realization that like, what is it that I want to do? What am I supposed to be doing? And that's where these books came from. And so I'm at this beginning phase of like, how does that work? And how, you know, being an entrepreneur for me is entirely new. I'm kind of got a foot in both worlds at the moment because I'm doing some contract work in corporate America, but my passion is really with these books and coaching. So yeah, I'm in this phase of like putting myself first, learning to say when I'm not okay, and learning to ask for help, and really focusing on how I can share my story to then help other mums along the way with theirs. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
So that's that's a big transition phase. And your first 3 books are geared more towards kids.
Yeah.
So when did you start writing those? Were you still in corporate America or did you already leave?
Yeah, no, so in 2020, I got furloughed, as did millions of people. And that's really when all of this started for me, was being made to take that pause was actually the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because I was in that hamster wheel of like, just continuously working to get the next job, to climb the corporate ladder. And I was successful, but I wasn't happy. And I was, you know, juggling being a mom to 4 boys and like climbing the ladder. And while I enjoyed the people I worked with, I didn't enjoy the hours I was working, and the work I was actually doing, I knew wasn't like, you know, in my heart. And so when I had that opportunity, like I was furloughed, I literally, like for the longest time, like a couple of weeks, I had no idea how to act. I didn't know what to do, because I didn't know what it was like to relax and like really have nothing to do. And that's when all of this stuff started. Like I did a lot of internal work. I started meditating, which was completely foreign to me. I had no idea how to do that, or the benefits of it. I started, you know, looking internally at limiting beliefs I'd had and things like that. And in doing that, that allowed this creativity to come out. And I always knew that, like, I knew I was a good writer. I always have known that. And I'd written like blog posts here and there, and I'd started things but never finished them. And so this was the opportunity for me to be like, right, I'm writing this children's book. I'm going to do it. And it just flowed. The first one just flowed out of me in that time frame. And then it was a question of like, okay, how do I get this book published? How do I do that? And of course, there are two. You can go the traditional route, and you can work to get an agent and get a book deal and get published. And that's, lots of people are very successful with that, and it can take a lot of time, and it can be a hard, lengthy process. And on the other side of that, there's self-publishing. So I was like, well, why don't I just give that a try? And so I did. And then the other two books came very quickly as well. So it was just this sudden, like, I don't know, it's like I turned on the faucet and allowed this creativity to come through. And it was just, the feeling I got from writing those books was just, it was the best feeling. So I knew I was onto something.
Well, I'm glad you turned on the faucet, because I love Mama Bear with the effed up hair, and it's so relatable, and I love the flow of, this vision of what you think motherhood's going to be like. Yeah, we're going to spin work and home and wife and friend. We're going to do it all, and then the reality hits, and it's full of joy, but it's also full of pain. And I even love, the progression of the hair throughout the book. It's just so awesome. And then the wine, and there's the comparison. I mean, there's so many hidden, like, I wouldn't say hidden, but there's just so many things in there that are just so relatable. So, I mean, we all have stories, and obviously this story in this book comes from, your personal stories.
Yeah.
What about your personal life can you share? Like, how does it show up on these pages?
That's a great question. So really the whole concept of the book at first, like I'd written these three children's books, and I knew on my heart there was something bigger, and that was telling my story. But that felt really heavy to let it out and like to tell my full story. And I was kind of like thinking like, okay, if I'm writing that sort of a book, it's like a kind of like a biography, but a self-help book as well, right? So it's like to other mums who are feeling this way, like here's my journey, here's what worked for me. And at the time, I just thought, you know what, if I'm writing this book for someone like me, I wouldn't sit and read that necessarily. Like would I have the time? Probably wouldn't make the time to sit and read that, nor would I really be pulled to that kind of a book, because I wouldn't be ready to hear it yet. And so something came to me of just like, how can I make this light? Like, it is a dark topic. It does, like you just said, there's both joy and darkness, and that's motherhood. And so and there's humor, right? There's all of it. So how can I make it this book that like speaks to moms? And so I just was like, what about, I'd just done these picture books for kids. I was like, what about a picture book for moms? Like, wouldn't that be amazing to have, like, it's time that we get tucked into bed. It's time that we're told a bedtime story. And so it's a poem. And I don't remember writing all of it, to be honest. Like, it just flowed out of me, and it very quick, like I did it very, very quickly. And that's where I think my story came through, because it just flowed out, that it was so authentic, that it just, like, everything that was on my mind came out. And it really is, like, I think it does show really well, like, the darkness and the light. And that was my journey for a long time, was I was stuck in that darkness, and I couldn't see how to get to the other side, but I didn't tell anyone. And so I lived this life, and it's kind of represented in the book as well, that, like, you think you're fine, or everyone thinks you're fine around you, but deep down you're not, you're struggling, but you won't tell anyone, because you think that you have to show up as this supermom, right? And I think the pressure on us in society these days is getting worse and worse with social media, of like, we have to be this perfect mom that does all the perfect things and has the birthday parties with the homemade cake and all this stuff. And it's like, how do we stop that? We can stop that by telling our authentic stories and by showing up as we are. And so, yeah, like, for many years, I hid that. I hid it from myself even. I didn't even really admit, like, how upset and depressed I was. And it wasn't really until that furlough, and when I started really, like, going internally and looking at, like, what was going on, I got a therapist, and we talked about it, and she's like, Jo, you are depressed. And it was such a shock, because to me, depression is, at that time, to me, depression is like crying all the time, right? That was in my head. That's what depression is. And while, yes, I certainly had moments like that, and it's referenced in the book, like one of the pages is you cry in your closet curled up in a ball, a shield around you that acts like a wall. Like, I have done that. But would I say I was depressed? No. But when I look back, I was angry all the time. I was resentful. I couldn't get out of bed. I was exhausted. Like, all these things lined up into like, yeah, I've actually been carrying this around for so many years, and it is a form of depression. And so that's what I was able somehow to like represent that in the book in a way that it does get dark. It shows that it was lonely, even though I had people around me. I had family around me, I had friends around me, but I made it lonely because I wouldn't tell anyone. And I think that's the message I want to get across, is the moment you do tell someone, the moment you can say, I'm not okay, is the moment that it really starts getting better. It really does.
As you spoke, I mean, I just relate so many things. I was like, check, 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 check. And, it's funny because I couldn't admit either that, okay, I'm miserable inside. And if I say these things out loud, then the people in my life are going to be hurt and offended.
Yes.
Like it's them. And from the outside, everything looks great. And everybody's telling you how great your life is. If I had your life, we do this to each other. If I had that, you're like, and you almost feel guilty for having anything that's not settling right. But then, you mentioned, all these feelings, you're sitting there with your therapist and, she tells you you're depressed. The thing I kept telling myself, no, I'm not depressed. It's just a bad day. It's just, I'm in a funk. It's a bad season. It's this and that, because I could get out of bed. And I had it in my mind, oh, if I were depressed, I would be hiding in bed all day, because that's what depression is. People are crying and, they can't get out of bed. And I thought, I'm not necessarily crying, but I was very angry. I was very short and irritable and exhausted and burnout and frustrated and full of anxiety and all of those things.
Yeah.
But a high functioning one, I didn't get out of bed and I kept powering through, and it kept making it worse. But there was so many things. I thought of the word connection when you were speaking, and same thing, you have 4 kids. You're never alone. You're at work, you're at home, there's people. I mean, you're never alone, but you're so lonely. And it took me years to figure out I was disconnected with myself. And even though I was around people, I didn't really feel connected because I was so disconnected with myself. And I just looking through this book, I see how we do that. Like, as the years tick by of motherhood, it's so easy to just lose yourself in that and wind up in depression. But then it's almost like we can't give ourselves permission just to sit with it, acknowledge that that's what it is, be okay with it, and then be like, or talk about it. And then, okay, what am I going to do about it?
Yep. It's so true that it's everything you just said just resonates. And that's exactly why I'm so passionate to talk about this and share it, is because if we don't, then we're just going to continue down this road of like always putting everyone else first before ourselves. And it is like, I love what you said about like, if you said it out loud, you were worried about like your family and friends and what they would feel. And that's exactly where I was. I was like, I can't say, even putting this book out, I was like, oh gosh, what are my kids going to think? Like, is it going to affect them that they're going to think, oh my God, I'm the reason that my mom was depressed? And I'm like, I can't even go there, because that's not the case. And it was allowing, like, I've actually discussed it with all of them and they love it. And we now find it funny, like that this is my story. And in a way it's teaching them that like, you have to have that self-love. You have to have that alignment in yourself before you do anything, because you will completely lose yourself, whether and I've got 4 boys. So it's, whether it's not necessarily just that mom role, it's that people pleasing role. And for my boys to see me now shift into this role where it's like, I'm going upstairs, there's a sign on the door that says, don't come in, or I'll tell them, like, I'm meditating. Unless it's 911 emergency, figure it out, right? And I'm lucky I can do that because they're a little bit older. I couldn't do that, you know, if they were little. But I think finding a way to be able to do those kind of things, to get that, even if it's 5 minutes to yourself where you can literally just breathe. And it might be 5 minutes of just allowing yourself to cry, or it might be 5 minutes of writing or doing something that just gives you the power back to have that time for you. It's so important. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, I think the next book that I'm writing is more of my story, because I think now I've written this one, it's like, okay, I've let out that, now let's go a little bit deeper. And it's going to be, it's called Stepping Away from Supermom, learning how to take off the cape and just be. And that's exactly what you just said. It's like, we don't have to fix it all. We don't have to like magically say, oh, I'm depressed, and now here's how I fixed it. Like, it's a journey. It's going to take some time, and it still does for me. Like, I still have days where I struggle, but in saying I've been depressed, or I've been on this journey of depression and I'm coming out of it, I've taken off that supermom cape. I've said no to that. It's like, I am no longer pushing myself to be this perfect supermom that doesn't even exist. And I'm allowing myself to just be me, be mom to my kids, the mom that makes mistakes, the mom that is real, the mom that, you know, like, is great on some days and not so great on other days. And that's okay. And I think that's the message I want to get across.
Absolutely. Even think about how I call them my Pinterest days. It's, you know, the perfect cake, the perfect party, it's my Pinterest days and the sign up genius days, where I felt guilty if, you know, whether it was something that the kids needed at school, whether they were in elementary or high school, you know, donate this or show up for this, volunteer for that, do this, do that. I felt as if I was such a failure if I was not volunteering, not donating, and it was so much on your plate all the time that you had nothing left to even give your family. And it's that people pleasing to the point where, I mean, I look at it now with whole new eyes, because been through the therapy, you know, got certified as a life coach, you know, read the books, done it. It's taken a lot of work, but I look back now and it is that total trying to fill my void, to feel needed, to feel valued and worthy and enough through pleasing other people. And what I did was completely depleted myself and wore myself out. So I wasn't filling any void. I was creating more of a void. And what I needed to do is go inward and have some self-love. And because it wasn't caring for myself. That's not self-love, that overgiving, you know, overdoing, overfunctioning. At all.
It's not at all. I think we're so similar. I mean, and I think so many moms will relate to this conversation, because it isn't. It's like, and actually, in doing what you've done and in doing what I'm doing, like, we're showing our kids, no matter what age, that we can change, that we can say, hey, I recognize this behavior isn't doing me any favors, and now I'm going to act this way. And like, they're actually seeing that growth, and I'm allowing them to see it because I have nothing to hide. Like, I'm not anymore pretending that I can fix every problem, because why should I be able to fix every problem? And like, the only problem I really need to fix, like you just said, is that void within me. And that's what I am now starting to get excited about, is like, what is it that brings me joy? And that honestly was the hardest thing to stop and really think about, is like, it's probably the same for you. I have so many years of this focus on those, I love it that you say Pinterest days, so many years on the focus on like what I should be doing versus like what feels good, what would I like to do today, and how can I balance that with being a mom, because of course there are some things that just have to get done. But it's the pressure of the fundraisers, the volunteering, all of that stuff, it's never ending. And whether your kids are young or whether they're old, it still continues. So that's not going to go away. What's going to change is how we show up to that and how we allow ourselves to step back. And that's one of the pages in the book, is like, stop comparing yourself from post after post, you know, put down the phone, see who loves you the most. And really, who loves you the most needs to be you. Like, that's been my biggest realization, is if I don't love me, if I don't love who I am, then I don't have much to give. And I was the same. I'd completely depleted myself to the point of, I actually think if 2020 hadn't happened, I would have had a nervous breakdown. I was very, very close to being just on the brink of completely losing it. That's how bad it was. And so in a way, I'm very thankful. You know, I know it was very bad year for lots of people, but for me, actually, I was able to recover because of what happened. Yeah.
And that's awesome. And I think, you know, one of the things too to point out is how when you start the healing process, you improve the relationships around you. And we are working so hard to perfect everything outside of us in attempts. We might not even really realize it, but you know, I'm going to go back to the Pinterest years. You know, why do I have to throw this party to look like this and have this cake and the food like this and blah, 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 when my kids are, it's my birthday. Will you just go play in the yard with me? So
yeah,
we're putting on this show, which we say is for our kids.
Yes.
What we're doing is exhausting ourselves, putting a wedge between us and our kids in that relationship of connection. And when we just, it's okay, you know, because I like, we have 2 kids, 6-year gap, 2 more. Wow. Am I doing things different? I was the Pinterest mom, and I do look back. We were looking at some photos just the other night, and the spread and the parties and the volunteering and the showing up and all of these things that, sure, they loved, but you know what they would have loved just as much? A store-bought cake and a pizza.
Oh my goodness.
No, you need this homemade salsa that's going to take me 3 hours, and go find something else to do, or chop these onions with me so I can get this 3-hour salsa done for your party in time.
Right.
And it is too, like you mentioned how now you can have these conversations with your kids about this book and you can laugh and things like that. And thankfully, I do that with my older kids too. And I feel like now that I've been through it and I am healing and growing and transforming continuously into this new person, it opens up these honest and raw conversations with people, and we can talk about it, and it just resolves that issue. Whereas before, you're trying to run around and control and resolve, you know, everything outside of you. And this is a lot. I don't want to necessarily say a lot less work. It's more meaningful work to work on yourself, but it really truly is a lot less effort, because I definitely have more energy now than I've ever had, because I'm not completely depleted.
Right.
You know, and it's even little things of, you know, volunteer. It's really looking at, you know, we talk about the people pleasing thing. If it doesn't come from a pure place of love, then I'm showing up with, you know, the wrong motives. And I think people pleasing is a really good one to check my motive. If I am doing this for you, is it truly coming from a place of love with no strings attached? Like, so much to the point, if I don't even get a simple thank you, am I good with that? And if that answer is yes, I'm your girl. I'm going for it. If I'm doing this because I feel guilty, I haven't signed up for anything, I say no.
I love that.
There's a million things you could be doing that will serve you and the people close to you. So much more in life. I'm never going to look back in my rocking chair, you know, when I'm 85, rocking, being like, I wish I would have made that 8-layer cake with this and that. And like,
no, It's amazing the synchronicity of this conversation, because actually I'm about to post either later today or tomorrow. I just got one of my memories on Facebook of, I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago. And I'm very similar. We have like 2 older and then a 6-year gap and 2 younger. And I'm exactly the same. My older boys laugh and then also kind of tease me about the different type of mum I am now with the younger 2. They're like, they get away with so much more, and like, you're so much more laid back. But I had this post of like, I live in Atlanta, I'd been in Washington DC for my work, so I'd been up there I think for like a week, and my now 13-year-old, it was his birthday, it was his 6th birthday. And I was rushing to get back. So like all week I'd been at the corporate office, and I'd been, doing all the stuff up there. And in my mind was like, I've got to get back for this birthday party. And exactly what you just said, I had to make the birthday cake. Who am I kidding? This was ridiculous. Like I flew in on Friday and the party was on the Saturday afternoon. And I was posting it. This is the interesting thing. I was posting about how stressful this was. And, like, of course I flew in, got to the airport, my car was dead. So it was like this myriad of things that happened of like, oh gosh, this is so bad. And why I couldn't just go, you know what, I'm going to buy a store-bought cake. He won't care. He doesn't even like cake. Like, that's the stupid thing. He didn't even really like cake. But I had it in my mind that I had to make this Star Wars cake that had like, candy around the outside and all this stuff, and the Star Wars, I bought the figures and everything to go on it, and I made cupcakes. And I got back from that trip, was exhausted. My car, there's an issue with my car, I had to get that figured out, came back, got up that early that morning, made the cake, made the cupcakes, was in such a frenzy, got to the party and didn't enjoy any of it because I was so stressed about the bloody cake. And it was like, what am I doing? I didn't realize it then. I was just, it was this like, oh, I'm exhausted and I'm stressed. And it was like almost like this addiction to that I couldn't let go of, right? And now looking back at it, it's like, why did I not just go and pick up a cake? Why couldn't I do that?
I know. But it brings up a great thing though, because now you are aware of that stuff and you can catch yourself in the moment, because say just your car not starting or, something like that. To me, I would have spiraled down too. And it's like, this is what always happens. I do, and I go. And then you have stuff like this. Now I look at it as, oh, there's a sign.
Exactly. Exactly. That's my sign to slow down. Yeah.
DoorDash, deliver it to this address, right?
Yeah.
This last, one of my kids just had a birthday in September, and I asked, do you want a homemade dessert? Because he likes this layered thing where we take ice cream sandwiches, which is super easy, unwrap, it's like layers of whipped cream and magic spell and whatever. I'm like, do you want to do that together, or we're going out to dinner, do you just want to go out for dessert afterwards, or do you want to come home and we'll have that? I just want to go to Krispy Kreme afterward. Okay. Of course, I did start to go there a little bit, but wait a minute. What about a candle? And what about singing? You start to do all that. And okay, ask him. It's his birthday.
Yeah.
I want to sing to you. Let's do candles. Do you want to, do that in the morning of your birthday? Like, let them figure out. They tell you. And this birthday let's see, his birthday was on Friday, and with the 2 oldest being in college, and they had games and things like this going. So we were kind of split up. We had, there was like 5 of us on Friday that celebrated, 5 of us, we all celebrated again on Saturday and then on Sunday,
right.
So each day was a little bit different, and he got to go to 3 different restaurants, all this different stuff. And it was no big party. There was nothing fancy. He said on Sunday, that was the best birthday ever.
Right.
And again, I have often explored the selfish side of people pleasing.
Yes.
And I've been thinking a lot about that, and I've been doing some writing about it. And it hit me then too, because it was Sunday night when we finally, were to have dinner with his oldest brother, and we just went to Pump House, the whole yogurt thing, make afterward. And when he said that on the way home, and I thought, here it is, trying to people please all these years, I was more focused on me
Mm.
than I was on the other people. And how I relate that back is, if I am not doing this, you're going to feel sad, or you're going to feel hurt, or it's all about, these are your emotions.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take them on as mine to try to resolve and fix. And I'm going to do that by doing more, giving more, all this kind of stuff. So it's like, even with you, the cake, for instance.
Yeah.
Were you upset that everybody else was going to be, or were you nervous everybody else was going to be upset that you didn't bring that home, that home baked cake?
Yeah.
Really, is it about the other people, or is it about, I can't handle it if you're upset with me?
Yeah, it is. It's so true. It's codependency. It's like, that's something that was completely foreign to me.
Yeah.
No idea what even codependency meant, or like what that was. And that's exactly it, is that this thought that can't be okay, because like they can't be upset with me, or they can't cope without me being, or they can't be, how can they not be happy with this, because this is what I've created. And it's just this, it's very interesting to see the behavior that comes along with that when you start to unravel it and really, like you said, like really look into it. What is it? And I think it does come back to so much internally. It's like your self-worth and loving yourself and being okay in your own skin and not having to fix things for everybody else, and really realizing that it all comes back to like how much you care and love yourself. And that was a big realization for me. Still is. It's still something I'm working on. But yeah, that's very interesting.
It truly is about developing that relationship with yourself, because look at how many more things you're aware of now. I mean, okay, very beginning, I'm aware, okay, I am depressed now. But with the people pleasing thing and the codependent, I didn't understand what that was. And when I really started to, have my eyes open to that too, I thought that a codependent was someone that was just dependent on everybody else, like they're lazy, they're, all this kind of stuff. And to learn that, no, you're dependent on other people to fill needs inside of you, your own self-love and your value and your worth. And people pleasing is part of that. Having really weak boundaries is all part of that. And I put a label on myself after lots of research and therapies and books and this and that. I just totally relate with trying to be that high functioning overachiever. And I remind myself sometimes, you're doing it again. And I call it my OAC. It's my overachieving codependence. I'm trying to overachieve right now because I am trying to feel worthy or enough or loved or liked by doing this, and this.
Wow.
I need to come back to me, and I need to, cut that off. So just that, here's my OAC kicking in.
I love that.
It's really helped me bring back, because then I can stop myself in my tracks, because it's not like you never get rid of it. It's always showing up. It's a matter of, am I going to light the spiral on, and am I going to spiral down with it? Am I going to get stuck there again? Or am I going to, there it is.
Right.
What am I going to do?
I love it. It's that awareness. And that's the biggest piece. I think that's what I'm learning is just being aware of it and not judging, like being aware of it and going, like you just said, there it is. What am I going to do with it? Will I just let it go? Or I'm going to follow it down that, rabbit hole and spiral. And some days you will, and some days you won't. Like, it's not going to be perfect, but like you said, the awareness of the behavior. I love that you have a name for it and that you've labeled it for yourself. I think that's genius to figure out what it is internally. Because I used to say like, I'm type A. And I was so proud of being this type A. And now it's like, good grief. I so don't want to be type A. Like that's, that's not who I am. That's who I thought I needed to be. Letting that go, and just having that realization. I'll have to come up with something that would, I think it's great to have something like you said, that like you trigger, there it is, OAC, then you can recognize it. I love that.
There it is. And I think when you have something like that, you can be a little bit less judgmental on yourself, because I
Yeah.
did notice in the book too. It's like we start judging ourselves and comparing ourselves to every other person.
Yeah.
And once you really start to go inward and heal, that need to compare yourself,
Yeah.
it kind of just falls away. I don't even
Yeah.
care, because I can look around now and be like, okay, I know what my life looks like from the outside. And
Yeah.
I know what people are seeing, and I know what's really going on in here.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else is going through the same stuff. I see what their life looks at like on the outside. I don't really truly know what's going on the inside, but I know they're dealing with their stuff too. Everybody has their stuff.
Everybody. So true.
It's so true. And it just helps you be less judgmental
Yeah.
on yourself. And that right there takes off just so much weight. It's like such a burden. And it does, I think, help you to show up and be more authentic and true
Mm-hmm.
in all of your relationships. And I mean, we all only have so much to give, and that's okay.
So true. Yeah. That was one of the things that I used to battle with, was like this inner jealousy I had. Like I would look at other posts and I'd be so jealous of like the mom who'd lost the weight, or the mom who'd done this, or, like, and there was this jealousy running within me of like, and then excuses like, oh, well, they had this and that's why they can do it. There was this like building resentment and just negative feelings that were going on. But now I learned to ask myself, of course, those feelings still come up because we're human, right? Like it's not going to just magically go away. But like you said, being aware of it and then asking myself, what is it in that person that I'm missing? Like, what is it? What's the feeling that I want that I don't have? And in that sense, then being jealous or having that type of negative feeling is actually good, because it's a marker of like, oh, this is what I want in my life. Not comparing, but like, I want the freedom to do this, or, it's just recognizing what is it in yourself that spurs that emotion, and then being able to act on it for you instead of like trying to be somebody else for them.
Yeah. And being able to step back, and instead of let those feelings of, say the jealousy really take hold and stick in your head, and then you be consumed with these nasty thoughts, and it only makes you feel worse. It does. It doesn't do anything to push you forward.
No.
It pulls you back. But to then get to the point where you can say, okay, that just triggered something in me. What is it? And what can I do about it? I like that, you said jealous, because I've kind of turned the jealous and envy thing into jealousy being good and envy being bad. And here's how I work it in my mind. If I have that jealous feeling, oh, it's because I want that too.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing.
No.
So now I have a decision. I can, kind of hate on that person for having, what I don't have, which is envy, or I can stick with the jealousy and be like, okay, I feel a little jealous, so I must want that. What can I do to get it?
I love that.
Maybe they're my mentor. Maybe they're my role model. Like, what are they doing? And maybe I ask them, like, hey, I really like this of you. Or I don't think there's anything wrong with saying something like, hey, I'm a little jelly about this with you.
Right.
You did that.
Yeah.
People are usually like, that builds connection. Like that jealousy can build like that. I think we've so used it as such a bad term.
I love that.
Oh, because it can fuel some good things. Whereas envy is, I hate you because you have that. And that's a spiral down. So
I love that.
That's just kind of one of those things where it goes back to that awareness. Okay, I have these feelings and they are a little bit jealous, but I can make this really work for me.
I can make it work for me because of that. I love that. I love the reframe of that. I'm going to use that in terms of like the envy, and it does, like just saying that, like there's a heaviness around envy. Whereas when you say, like, kind of as I was alluding to too with jealousy, it's like it's a flag to say, hey, I want this. So that I loved how you reframe that. That's fantastic. Yeah, so true.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many people that are put in our lives that we can learn things from.
Yes.
Why not? And if it's a jealousy feeling that stirs that up, because our emotions, pay attention to them. And it doesn't have to immediately be a bad thing.
Bad thing. Yeah.
There's one thing I did want to read in the book. I kept this page open, and I don't know if we've already went past this conversation, but I loved, on the dark.
Yeah.
You say, "Dear Mama Bear with the greasy hair, your world's crashing down. It's all so unfair. This motherhood thing, tell me, what do you see? A girl now so lost, once was vibrant and free. Your home is no haven. You've made yourself sick. You slowly gave up. Time passes by so quick. With bags beneath your eyes and skin pale and dry, you sit in the corner and quietly cry." Yeah, and I think I don't want to make our conversation sound like, okay, once it's fine. Just let everything just be fine. You just have to change your mindset and you won't have these days. These days are going to come.
Yep. Yeah.
But they can stay dark, or, as you flip through the book, things are getting brighter, when you're in the sunshine. And it is about really just having that toolbox of, I think, knowledge, a relationship with yourself and a relationship with other people that support you, that when you get in these dark times, because we all will for the rest of our lives, that it's okay. I'm here. I'm going to be gentle with myself, but I know I'm going to get through. And I wonder, was there a time or a turning point that you remember it's going to be okay? Like I'm at this turning point and I'm getting it. It's sinking in.
Absolutely. It's actually, the way this happened is just, it's very interesting the way that happened. They say that, you write the books you're supposed to read, right? And so this book came out of me. Like I said, I actually wrote it in 2020, 2021, and it just got published this year. When I wrote it, I thought I'd gone through everything that I thought I'd had some very low lows as a mom. And I thought, while I'm not naive enough to think that every day is going to be sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows, I thought I'd been through, some really significant hard things. And actually what happened is last year was the most harrowing year I've had, to be very blunt and very honest. And as a mom, I faced with two of my boys, two situations that brought me to my knees. And I had no idea that they were coming. And it was just this big, big, big shock. And quite honestly, that page came back to me because that had been me as a younger mom. And I was, and in the book, the page you just read, it's very, very dark. But one thing I love about that page is if you look at it, and it's amazing because the illustrator and I didn't have a conversation on this. This is just the way that she drew it. To the right of the mom, there is light flooding through the window. So it's a very, very dark room, but there's light. And that tells me that if I just look up, if I just ask for help, if I can just see that things are going to be okay, they will. And it's not to say they'll magically get better overnight. Like with my oldest son, we're still dealing with, it's still a very hard situation that we're going through. But I have this sense, because I have now these tools, because I know I have my therapist, I know, what makes me feel better. I know my triggers. I know when I need space, and I can say, I'm not okay. I need a day. I need half an hour. I need whatever it is I need. I don't have to be that mom back in that room like for days, right? I certainly still have that time. Like I still cry in my closet. I'm not going to lie about that. Like there are times where I just literally will just have a moment where I'm just on the floor in my closet with the door shut crying because I need to get it out. But now the difference is I don't spiral and stay there for days and days and days and days. I can come out of that. And that is the beauty. And the beauty of the book, I think, is that it does like show these very dark times. And at the same time, if you look at it, there is light there. And that's where I think we can all help each other as moms. Like we're all going to be in this tunnel at certain points of our motherhood. And as the kids get older, it doesn't always get easier. There are going to be things that happen. And it's like we can all shine that light for each other, like, because we're going to be at different points at different times. And yeah, it's certainly one of those. It's just going to continue to evolve. And the difference is if we're okay with us, we can get through it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That was, it's takes a strong relationship with yourself to be vulnerable and transparent. And I think once we do, though, it's so freeing. And especially when it opens the doors for that communication for other people to be like, yeah, me too. Because I feel like we spend so much time invalidating ourselves.
Yeah.
For feeling the way that we do. Like, I shouldn't feel this way. I should love every second of motherhood. And I don't love every second of motherhood. There's a time each day that I don't love. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are they coming home? I just want like 5 more minutes to finish. That, you know, I mean, right? Yeah. Let's be honest.
Right. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. We're all
nothing wrong with that.
You know, and it just, I laugh because I also love on the page when I always say you're right. You're at the grocery store in the book, right? I just laugh because you mentioned how, you know, now you can ask for help and support. And as a young mom, I never did. For some stupid, crazy reason in my head, I thought, well, you're the one that had these 4 kids, figure it out.
Yeah.
Who did that to themselves? But I can also remember, same thing, just I'd be in the shower crying because that was a safe place, right? In the shower crying, thinking, where is my village? Everybody says, it takes a village. It takes a village. And I'm like, well, where is my village?
Mine. Yeah.
Well, it's not going to come knocking on my door. I found that out. You have to ask for it.
So true.
And you can't deny it when it is offered. Because number one, I wasn't asking. But if somebody did offer something, oh, well, I'm picking up my kid from this place. I can drop yours off. No.
Right.
Because
you don't want to inconvenience. Yeah.
I don't want to inconvenience you. And in fact, since I'm there, it's actually easier for me to take them home to your house. Right. All the time. So I deny it. Now, if someone offers, sure. Do you want to pick up milk from me on the way home too? Right. It's like, what? You know, you're crazy. But this picture in the grocery store, I also thought of, like, with my older 2, you know, in Michigan, it could snow 8 inches and, you know, in a matter of 2 hours. And here I am trying to push a grocery cart with 2 small kids and groceries through the parking lot to get back out to the car. Mind you, in the store, you know, they've cried or screamed or knocked something off the shelves or whatever. And all the way home, just silently crying, you know, like just going to the grocery store. I just want to go alone. So maybe you call a sitter. Can you come over for 2 hours so I can go to the grocery store? Because when my older 2 were born, you know, or first born, shipped wasn't a thing. Now it is.
Right.
And I'm all over it. Or, you know, to the hubs, could you pick up something on your way home? No, I don't want to inconvenience him. Or maybe I go at night. Well, no, it's family time. I have to be here for bath time and books.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
The stuff that I did to myself, it was... And it didn't make me a better mom. It didn't make me a better wife, a better friend, a better anyone. It made me a really grouchy, resentful one. And why does it have to take us to our breaking points to figure this stuff out? You know, it's like,
I know. And that's my hope, is that, like, it doesn't, for some moms, it doesn't have to get to that breaking point. It's everything you just said. I absolutely agree with it. It's like, what we do to ourselves. And like, when you say, you know, like, we have to be there for the bedtime, for the bath time, for all this stuff, it's like, the more I'm realizing now, like, letting go, like, I actually was prohibiting them from being able to do things by themselves. You know, I suddenly became this, like, mom that swooped in and solved every problem and did everything. And it was like, what am I doing? My kids need to figure that out. I didn't have, you know, like, when I was a kid, you know, you just, there are certain things you just figured out. And I think we're in this interesting age where it's like, kids get so much, you know, like, there's so much that we're doing for them, when really, like, that's a developmental piece for them. They need to learn to figure some things out for themselves, and mom doesn't have to be always there swooping in to fix it. So yeah.
And they feel really good when they figure that stuff out.
They do. Yeah.
You know, it's like, I'm sorry, but you're in 8th grade. Make your own lunch.
Totally.
You can put an apple or a peanut butter sandwich in a bag all by yourself. I do not need to be doing this anymore. And it was really hard to break that because I felt rotten. Well, why can't you do that? You know, but it was robbing them of dignity. It was robbing them of self, like just that independence and learning their own to be responsible for themselves. And you know, when I had a realization of too is if I don't stop overdoing, I am going to raise a bunch of entitled people. I will put another entitled person out in this world, right? That can't take ownership and accountability and responsibility for themselves. And if we do that, that is the type of person we create. And then we spend, you know, and then they move back in when they're 45, you know, and we're retiring, right? We wonder why. Well, because all the adults in my life have always been responsible for me. It's like, you're to me, overdoing now, I look at that is failing as a mom. Yes. And that is a huge shift in my brain that, oh my gosh, like I'm doing you a disservice by overdoing for you. I will do these little acts of kindness because I want to from my heart. I'm not going to stop that, but I will not do everything. And I used to, oh my God, I used to rant, Joe. I would say, I do everything for everybody every second of the day, and I'm exhausted. And I would basically scream it at them, and they're all looking at me like, well,
you don't have to. Yeah.
Right. Same thing. Always done it. So they are just going to wait around because they obviously must think I love it. Right. It's so the word that comes to mind is so twisted. Like
it's very twisted, very twisted. And I think it's also, it's that control piece of like, it's taking on this, like, it is like putting on that supermom cape of like, I have to do this. Like, I have to do all this stuff. And at the same time, like not letting, like silly things, like not letting them load the dishwasher because it's not done right, like the way I want it. Like you just said, they'll figure it out and they'll learn. And we don't have to be so controlling that it has to be done our way. Right. And that was my biggest thing. That's one thing when I first got a coach that she said to me that led to this whole book that's coming, this Stepping Away from Supermom. She listened to me talking about all these plates I had spinning and how I couldn't let one go. And she was like, hold on a second. She's like, what if you gave like one of these plates to somebody else? And I was like, I can't. No one else can do it like me. You know, like it was all this like, I have to have this thing done perfectly. She's like, what if you gave one of the plates to your husband? And you know what immediately came out of my mouth, which was the worst thing ever, was like, well, I guess it could crash. I guess it would be okay. Like I initially assumed that he would fail just because it wasn't being done my way. And that was such a light bulb moment for me, because it was like, who do I think I am that I have to have all this control to, you know, of course he can do things his own way. And of course he'll figure it out. And, you know, he might not do things the way I do them, but that's okay. And it was then that she kind of said, she's like, you know, that supermom outfit that you've been wearing, you can take it off. And it was just like, I didn't know how to be like, I didn't know how to take it off. But now it's like, it's off. It's like thrown away. It's gone to Goodwill. Like, I don't want that cape back.
It's very humbling, isn't it? It's like we really humble ourselves. And I look back too, and I just with you speaking, how prideful you become in doing all of that. It's like you wear it as a badge of honor, and at the same time, you're so resentful for it.
Yes,
it makes zero sense.
Right. And then that leads to like, and it's in the book, like that's where it leads to like this got wine mentality of like, the only thing that's going to help me at the end of the day is a glass of wine. Now, don't get me wrong, I still love having a glass of wine, but for a different reason now. But it was like, I have become so dependent on like, I have all these things to do and nobody cares and I do it all and blah, blah, blah. And I need to drink 3 glasses of wine at the end of the night to like feel better. And it was like, no, you don't. Like, stop doing all the crazy things. And then, yes, you can enjoy a glass of wine, but you don't need 3-4 glasses, like it's so interesting what we do.
I was so there, that same thing. It was, that 5-ish o'clock time,
Yeah.
came around, and it became just a habit.
Yeah.
I really, one glass is fine, but then, I'm going to have two, because then I want one, I'm going to sip on one just for a minute and just sit with a book for 5 minutes. And then I'm going to, start dinner. I just like to sip on some wine when I have dinner. And I don't know, it's a weird thing, because in the past year, and it was immediately after I did have COVID last October, not drinking for almost like a whole month, because it just was like repulsive.
Right.
I said right then and there, like, it's just a weird habit. I really I drink so much water through the day. Really, all I want is something with flavor.
Right.
So I'm going to find some non-sugary, whatever thing that I can drink while I'm having dinner. And you know what? Or making dinner. It's not a bad thing to have a glass here or there, but I don't need to do this every day.
Every day. Yeah.
And I'm making drinks when I go out to dinner with friends or this and that. So I am going to make sure it's a social thing. And if I have a glass of wine on a Tuesday night at home by myself, that's fine too, but I'm not going to do this every night. And whew, what a relief. It's like, So,
and when you break that cycle,
I want to do this again, because I think we would have so much more to talk about. So keep writing these books. Not that we only have a book to discuss, because I think we could go on and on about self-love and people pleasing and boundaries and everything. So
absolutely love to chat.
Where can people find you?
So on Instagram, my handle is @livinginjotopia, and I have my website is livinginjotopia.com, and my books are all wherever books are sold, but they're online anywhere, so you can just look up Joe Dodd. And you should find all of my books. So but at Living in Jotopia. I'm mainly on Instagram these days.
Okay. Spell Jotopia for us.
Jotopia.
Okay.
So
awesome.
That's my company. Jotopia Productions that's where that came from.
Love it. Well, it has been a pleasure speaking with you. And I think every single person listening probably couldn't get enough of this conversation, because they were checking their boxes. I relate. And I hope it inspires people, because I know this book does. It really inspires that we're not alone, and make changes. No one's judging but you. And there's the sunshine, the light is within the dark. So
it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jamie.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you so much for being here as we kick off this podcast together. I really appreciate you joining me on this journey, because I'm well aware you could be doing or listening to anything right now. Hey, if you enjoy the Authentically Raw content, please support the show by following, rating, and reviewing on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. You can also follow me on social media for daily inspiration. Head over to my website, jamieberris.com, to sign up for weekly transformation tips. Or if you're interested in coaching, I currently have 3 openings for one-on-one coaching. If you're looking for an empowering community, we'd love for you to join us in the Transformation Tribe, our group coaching membership. More info available on my website under the Life Coaching and Membership tabs. One last thing, I'm rooting for you. Be real, be raw, be authentic.